Hey guys, Steve here again from McAllen, Texas. I want to talk about, as I pull up my notes here, I want to talk about the experience I had 2 days ago. So, for a long time, I've wanted to do a little tour of the U.S.-Mexico border, especially with all the what's happened in the last 4 years under the current administration and all the people who have crossed over the wrong way, which I was told was about 11 million. I don't know if that number is correct, but it's probably around there, give or take a few million. Who knows? But I didn't want to just hear about what's going on from politicians or people trying to do photo ops or things like that. I find that that information is not 100% accurate. I think there's accuracy riddled within the information, but I want to know more accurate information and what's right, what's true, what's not true, what's fact, what's false. Okay? So, a couple of months ago, well, more than a couple of months ago, I was introduced to this guy named Victor Castillo. He is a pastor here. You know, we're Christians, fellow Christians, brothers in Christ, and of course, there's a lot of similarities in our thought processes. But he's also a reporter, a freelance reporter with Telemundo and Voice of America, and he does a lot of reporting along the border. Okay, he is his family is a Mexican background. He was born here in the Rio Grande Valley, so he is a U.S. citizen by birth. He spent his early years up to about 12 years old across the border with his family in Reynosa, which is the bordering town on the Mexico side. And then he has spent the rest of his life here. A little bit in other parts of the States, but for the most part, right here in the Rio Grande Valley. And again, as a Telemundo and Voice of America reporter, his primary focus is the border issues. So he has a ton of experience, ton of knowledge, and he has just spent a lot of time at the border. So who there is probably not a more perfect person than someone like him to give a tour, okay? Because he knows far more than anyone doing a photo op. So anyways, so we go to the border. I didn't have my passport, so I left it back at home, so we couldn't cross the border. So I want to talk about three things that I learned or observed during my time. Okay, I want to do this as quickly as possible. So the first one is the open sections of the wall, okay? Open sections of the wall. So if you paid attention to what politicians are saying, they sometimes talk about these open sections of the wall. You know, so-and-so president didn't do much to build this. You know, this president didn't do that, or that president didn't. You know, it's just like a bunch of, honestly, nonsense. But back to the open sections. Victor points it out. I start watching the wall as we're passing it. And then I start noticing these open sections. And then I also notice the changes of the wall structure, going from this robust steel, kind of rust color wall section to a chain link fence. Back to the rust colored steel chain link fence. And I'm thinking, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm thinking, why would you build that nice wall next to a chain link fence? Nice wall, chain link fence. What's a chain link fence going to do? Anyway, so the area we were in, we circle back around. We go up to that section of the wall. And he says, and then we meet a Border Patrol officer who is super nice. There's actually several of them in the area. This guy was really, really nice. And so we just told him why we were there. And he's like, cool, just, do whatever. And so we go up to the wall and we go up to I point out the chain link fence again. We go up there. Victor said, look over the wall and you'll see why it's a chain link fence. So I look over the wall, there's probably a 20-foot drop, like straight down. There's no incline. It is a straight drop, like a cliff. So if you fall, you're gonna hurt yourself, okay? No question. Plus, the way that part, it was a concrete, 20 feet down, straight concrete wall, smooth concrete wall. You can't climb up that. So I was like, all right, okay, that makes sense. There was no need for this giant structure over here to be over here because of the way they built it. And then we go back to the robust part, and then there's a door open. I said, why is the door open? He said, well, first of all, going through the door, guess what? You're still in the United States of America. Okay, you haven't entered Mexico. In fact, we're probably half a mile to a mile away from the border, okay? Because we couldn't even see the Rio Grande River at that point. But he said this land on the other side of the wall is actually owned by private U.S. citizens. Okay, it's just private land. But for whatever reason, the government built the wall that far back from the border. Now, I've heard that before, but to see it up close, it was interesting. Actually, we saw people coming in, going through the wall onto the private land, people who worked for the owner of that land. And so, and then we go down further and we see more spots. And so what Victor described was the reason they built the wall the way they did with these openings was to force those who do cross the river illegally, force and kind of funnel them to a point so then they can intercept them. Okay, you can't monitor every inch of a wall or a border perfectly. So you got to build stuff to kind of funnel people a certain way. Now, granted, I'm in McAllen. I'm not in Arizona, New Mexico, or even California, so I don't know everything about the whole wall. I know this section. I know in this section, that's what they do, or at least that's what they did. And so these openings in the wall, which sometimes has gotten news, or news spotlight about how, why are these openings there? Why are these gates open? In fact, I've seen them. I've seen these news articles. Well, they're actually designed that way on purpose to funnel people to certain points to be intercepted, or at least that's the goal. It doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly, but that's the intended goal of the way they designed it. So that's what I learned about some of the open parts of the wall. The second thing I learned, well, I actually already pointed it out. The wall is not necessarily at the border, okay? It could be a mile back from the border. So a lot of these places where you see migrants and immigrants looking through and you see the cameras, they're actually already on United States soil, okay? Again, I don't know if other parts of the wall are right at the border or not, so I can't speak to that, but at least in Texas, in this part where the Rio Grande River is at, it's not the case. The river is the border. And once they cross the river, they're in the United States. They're no longer in Mexico. And the wall could be half a mile to a mile away, okay? So since they're already there, that's why they built it the way they did, to funnel them again to a certain point. So, just keep in mind that the border wall, regardless of who built it, is not always at the border. Now, the third thing I learned, actually, I already knew this. It wasn't a new thing, but I think my knowledge of it definitely expanded. My understanding of it definitely expanded. But what was new to it was that it wasn't just in one spot, okay? Because all I knew was this one spot in Reynosa, Mexico. They call them camps, migrant camps. Okay, sometimes we see them on the news. We see people sitting in these camps trying to get over, claim asylum, different things. But there's an understanding, especially within certain groups within America, that those people are all trying to rush in illegally. Okay, now I'm not saying that there are not a lot of people trying to do that, okay? I think Victor said 11 million people have crossed in the last 3.5 years. So yeah, there's a lot of people trying to cross the wrong way. There's no question about that, and that has to be fixed. But not everyone is trying to do that. And that's what I'm trying to highlight here at the end. We need to look at them very differently and through different lenses than we do people who are trying to enter illegally, okay? They're there trying to go through the legal process of crossing the border. So during our tour, we were at a bus station. This bus station is a point where migrants come after they cross, irregardless of how they cross, but they come to this bus station very frequently, and they tend to disperse around the United States. Now, one thing I learned in that is that most of them, not all, but I would argue the vast majority of them, after speaking with and learning this from Victor, are going to places where they have family. Okay, they're just not picking a random place. They're not throwing a dart at a map and say, I'm going to go to Georgia or Atlanta, Georgia, or Dallas, Texas, or New York City. No, they're going where they have family already. And these family are there generally helping them line up jobs ahead of time before they show up, so that when they arrive, they can start working immediately. So in the bus station, he noticed this migrant family, and he said he was pointing out some different things, explaining some different things, and then he pointed out this family. He says, they're probably a migrant family that just arrived in the United States. We didn't know legal or illegal at that moment. And so the father and their daughter kind of walk around us, and then as they're coming back, Victor stops them and starts talking with them. Surprisingly, this guy had pretty decent English, the migrant. So here's what I learned. Venezuelan family trying to flee Venezuela because of all the stuff. And if you don't know what's going on in Venezuela, just Google it. It's pretty bad. It's really not a great country to be in at this moment. There's a lot of problems going on. They're fleeing. So they came, they actually went to a neighboring country and let their daughter be born there. I can't remember what country it was, but they went to a neighboring country to Venezuela to have their daughter born so she could be a citizen of that country rather than Venezuela. And then from there, they traveled up to Mexico City, and he got a job there and started applying for legal. I can't remember the name of the status. There was like a code that they use so they understand like what type of immigrant is coming in. And so he went to Mexico City to apply to begin his application process for that. It can take a long time to go through that process, up to a year even. He got through it in 3 months. And basically, you apply and then you wait and you wait and you wait until they call you. And then 3 months after they got to Mexico City, they got the call randomly. And when you get the call, you got to move. You got to move and get to the interview place. And it's not in Mexico City, okay? It is at the border. So if you look at a map, Mexico City is not next to the border. So how is this guy going to afford to get there like tomorrow? So he got the call and he needed to be at the border tomorrow. So his boss, honestly, I would love to meet his Mexican employer, because his Mexican employer, knowing his situation, gave him more than he earned and then gave him money for travel so he could fly to the nearest airport and then take a quick bus up to Reynosa. And then from there, they got there and then went through the process. It's about a 4-hour interview process, I'm told. And then through that, you're either approved or denied. If you're denied, you're sent back into Mexico. If you're approved, you're allowed into the United States immediately with legal status, even the ability to work. So they got approved and he came in. So he's describing his life back in Venezuela. He's describing their process of getting there. And you could see the relief on his face. In fact, we asked him about it. He just looked joyful, but hearing what he just went through to get there, I'm thinking, okay, where's all this joy coming from? Really what it was he was describing it as it was like a weight was lifted off his shoulder the moment he stepped foot in the United States. Because he knew in that moment his daughter was safe. She was safe. He didn't have to carry that burden anymore. He didn't have to have the weight on his shoulders anymore. Now, yeah, he's going to face some challenges as an immigrant. He's going to face some problems, but he knew his daughter was safe, much safer than she would have been back in Venezuela at this moment. So why am I bringing this up? In all the talk about the border, it's so easy to lump all the immigrants into one category of people just trying to rush our borders, invade our borders, and come in the wrong way. And again, I've already pointed it out. A lot of people have. There's no question a lot of people have come in the wrong way. But there are these camps on the other side of the border, and obviously this guy who is in Mexico City. But there's these camps on the border, on the U.S.-Mexican border, on the Mexican side, housing people like this guy from Venezuela. And they're sitting there waiting to do it right. And so I don't know if this is going to change your heart or change your mind, but I do hope that as you think about them, you'll take a step back and say, I recognize there's a problem, let's stop the problem. I'm not going to argue with that. You can say that every day, any day, all day. But at the same time, let's recognize that there are people, and not a small number of people, who are at the border waiting to come in and are trying to do it the right way. Because those people deserve to be respected for doing it the right way. So there's my take on the border with McAllen and Reynosa on the U.S.-Mexico side. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to our channel. Please like the video. This is all about analytics, but it helps grow the channel. It's a new channel, as you can see. So share it if you think people are going to be helped by it, and I'll see you next time.